Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Veeam webinar. We have Sunny here who'll be presenting the webinar today. I'm just going to hand it over to Sunny. If you guys have any questions, you can leave it in the question and answer bar on the right, and we'll try to answer all your questions as much as possible. At the end of the session, we'll have a short quiz, and before that, we'll also have a question and answer round. So if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to leave questions there. Sunny, I'm going to hand it over to you to start the presentation now.
Thanks, Subhi. Thanks a lot for this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunny. I work in Redington as a pre-sales engineer and taking care of Veeam solutions. I hope now everybody is staying home, and in this situation, this is the best way to communicate with our partners. Lots of things are happening around the world, and there are lots of negative things are happening along with it. If we talk about the technology world in terms of Veeam, there are lots of good things. The new things, the new features have been launched by Veeam, and I'm sure most of you are already aware of the fact that Veeam not recently, almost 1.5 months ago, they have launched a very featured heavy product, which is Veeam version 10. And today we are going to talk about the new features which Veeam had introduced. I'll try to give you a brief demo of the major features which Veeam had introduced. So this time, Veeam had almost introduced 150 new features. So I cannot explain each and every feature right now in this webinar, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. And guys, if you have any questions related with this features and all, you can write it onto your chat tab, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. If not, you can send me an email. You can see my email. I'll try to respond on email as soon as possible. So let's start the agenda today. So for today's agenda, I'll start with the brief introduction of Veeam. What Veeam does, what is the entire portfolio of Veeam, then the major part, then the main things for which we have created this webinar today. It's the V10 features, and then a small demo of the major feature of Veeam, which is NAS backup. That also I'll try to show you a small demo in my lab, how the backup works, how you can restore the NAS backup using Veeam. So let's start it. So as you all know, Veeam is a company which is having a very nice, manifesto which says that Veeam is very simple, flexible, and reliable. So if I say a simple, everybody is aware of the fact that who are working with Veeam infrastructure, that if you want to install a Veeam, you can do it in less than 15 or 20 minutes, let's say some 10 or 12 clicks. Next, Veeam is installed. So in terms of the implementation, Veeam is very simple. When I say a simple doesn't mean that this product is an SMB product. It can be because Veeam is a software-defined component which can be installed on one server, or it can be installed on a distributed environment in multiple servers also. So when I say flexible means today I can start it with one server, and later as my infrastructure goes, I can expand it on multiple servers also. Veeam does not lock any of the end customer with any of the hardware vendors. Veeam is very flexible, it's hardware agnostic. You can install Veeam on any of the hardware on Windows platform. With V10, there are a couple of new features introduced, which is on Linux platform, which again I'm going to talk about in my coming slides. Those are again very nice features. Then The third part, reliability. See, if you talk about Veeam's, the Veeam journey, why Veeam is so successful in the market. So the if you talk about end customer scenarios, see Veeam in our language we just simply says it just works. So what it means that, see, in backup world, what we are doing, we are always taking a copy of our backup and we wanted to make sure that that copy of your backup is 100% recoverable whenever you requires, right? So in Veeam, we have multiple ways to check to verify our backup, whether the backup which we are taking is recoverable or not. So with those, recoverability features, with those verification checks which Veeam does, uh, because of this, the end customer sees a result of it, and whenever they want to recover a data, it always recovers in a proper way, in an appropriate way. So the three manifestos of the Veeam, which says that the simple, flexible, reliable, it's still intact with it. With the V10 feature, the new features which we have involved, they are also working on the same principle. And uh, along with it, Veeam is also coming up with, it's not coming up with, they are already in that world wherein we are integrating the cloud technologies of the world along with the same console. So without going further delaying into that, let me talk about the platform. So if you see this slide, in this slide, this is the entire portfolio of Veeam. So in Veeam, we have something called the main, heart of Veeam is called Veeam Backup and Replication. If you can see in the center, it's backup and replication. So this is the main tool which gives me a centralized management of my backup as well as replication jobs. Okay, so when I say that backup and replication is a centralized management console, okay, if you talk about in today's world, if you talk about the data centers, the workloads which the data center carries. So if you see on the top, there are four workloads which we have defined. So first workload is your cloud workload, which either carries Azure, AWS, IBM, Google, or any other third-party cloud. Or if you have any virtual workload, which is either VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, AHV, or any physical workload, which either carries Windows, Linux, Oracle, or SAP HANA workload, everything can be managed through one single centralized console called Veeam Backup and Replication. This is a very nice console wherein I can have a GUI view and a policy-based backup of all three workloads. Okay, now in my coming slides, I'm going to talk about the cloud features of Veeam, because see, in Veeam we have something, the rule which says that 3-2-1. Okay, so how to justify that rule, how we can create the backup things, how we can have a copy of our data in different locations, how we can leverage all those things. With Veeam Backup and Replication, you can do all those things. So this is the heart and soul of Veeam, wherein most of the things for backup related with backup and replications are being configured. Then we talk about the verifications, the reliability. In Veeam, we have something called data labs. Data Lab is a very nice feature which is being used by many enterprises to do testing of their backups, to create development environment. So Data Lab is basically an isolated environment of your exact production environment in the same environment. So what I mean that you have your backup data available. We are booting up your backup data in the same environment, in an isolated environment, and giving you an access on the same subnet to see how your backup is performing, to have an access of your backup. So what all advantages you can get along with it? See, you can see your backed up data, you can use it for patching, you can use it for testing, or you can use it for any other purpose, whatever you want. So Data Lab, other than this, Data Lab has also a couple of other new features, which is ransomware protection, the share backup, and all those things. That is also included in Data Labs. Then, if you go on top of the ladder, this backup and replication is one of the product which does backup and replication. Along with it, we have another product which is being used for orchestrations of your DR. Veeam, it's called Veeam Availability Orchestrator. Veeam Availability Orchestrator is a product which is being used to document your DR plan, to create your DR plan, to automate your DRs. Right. So this is basically another tool which is being used to create to automate DR sites. Then on top of it, you have very nice tool provided by Veeam called Veeam One. This is being used for the monitoring and analytics purpose. This tool has more than 200 templates, inbuilt templates, which gives you an visibility inside your virtual infrastructure, virtual and backup infrastructure, that how your backup infrastructure is behaving. It has very nice reports. It has some business views. It has some graphical views which you can configure according to your requirement. And this tool is also a customizable tool which you can use along with your existing applications to create alerts, to create notifications. And this tool also gives you a kind of visibility of the issues which you are having in your virtual environment, and it will also try to give you a solution of it. So this Veeam One tool is a very nice tool, and lots of enterprises are using it to monitor their infrastructure. Then the last part in Veeam is the APIs. See, in backup world, your backup storages are very important. So with the help of universal storage APIs, what we do, we integrate with couple of industry leading vendors, and we give you, kind of high performance when you are doing a backup or a replication. So all those things are all included in it. So if I say in a brief that the overall portfolio of Veeam, this is the overall portfolio of Veeam, which includes cloud, virtual, and physical backup from one centralized console. Right? You don't have to go in any other console to configure all those things. Then the last part is, see, we have covered like cloud part, the virtual part, the physical part. Then you have another part called software as a service, which is another niche space wherein Veeam is doing very nicely. It's called Veeam Backup Office 365. It's a separate product. This is being selling in Veeam like a hotcake. Lots of enterprises are using it. This product is a standalone product which is being used to back up Office 365 data. It includes, with one license, you can get a backup of mailboxes, you can get a backup of OneDrive, you can get a backup of Microsoft Teams and your mailbox. So in total, all in all, this is the entire portfolio of Veeam. Now, where Veeam is heading towards, why you need a Veeam. So since I have discussed that Veeam is heavily focusing onto a cloud data management part. So these are the 5 pillars which Veeam says that we are going to bank upon. So first part is, as I said previously, the backup and recovery. So we are already doing very good in this part. We have already achieved, very handsome amount of number in terms of customers, and they're very happy with backup and recovery. And most of you guys are already aware of the fact that in backup and recovery, I can backup, then recover anything wherever I want. So in Veeam, we have very nice feature that Veeam doesn't charge you to, to restore any data. So if you have Veeam backup replications with you, you have taken a backup of, let's say, your workload, and later if you want to recover that workload and you don't have licenses available with you, still we allow you to restore anything with community edition. You don't have to buy a license for it, so we don't lock you in this thing. So what we say that if you are backing up anything, you can recover it anywhere, wherever you want. See, with the V10 new features, which I'll talk about later, which is a very nice feature, it's called portable backup. This term is very nice term. What does it mean? How does it work? It's a very nice thing. So the portability of backup means I can take a backup of my infrastructure and recover it anywhere, wherever I want by taking that backup file. Right. So I'll talk about this at later. Let it be a suspense. Then the second part is the cloud mobility. See, for Veeam, this is a very nice feature, and lots of enterprises are now looking at this feature, using this feature. Now, in cloud mobility, first let me talk about the on-premise customer, right? So in today's world, everybody is talking about the cloud part. So we are talking about the hybrid cloud. We're talking about the on-premise plus the public clouds and all. So what happened in this scenario? Veeam gives you a flexibility with the existing license to use cloud features which are being provided by public cloud vendors. So, for example, this is again one of the new features which is being introduced by Veeam in V10. I can keep a copy of my data in either Azure Blob or AWS S3 or any other compatible blob storage by without taking any new licenses. It's the same licenses which covers the cost of this cloud integration. So the point is, with the same license, with the same console, you can get an functionality of public cloud platforms without investing much on top of it. So you don't have to create side-to-side VPN to get this blob integration capability of Veeam. Now, the third part, which is monitoring. As I said earlier, that monitoring is a tool which is provided by Veeam called as Veeam One. It's a very nice tool. This helps us to see our infrastructure, how that infrastructure is going to behave. So it helps us in forecasting my infra, it helps us in the utilization of my infra, and couple of other things. So Veeam is heavily focusing on this as well. Then the last part is orchestration. See, the orchestration, as I said earlier, it's being used for DR. It's called automation of DR, documentation of your DR. This is a separate product. Then the last one is the most important part is governance and compliance, right? How you make sure that you guys are GDPR compliance, how you are making sure that your data is protected via ransomware. So how you make sure that the data which you are backing up is compliant by your IT department or compliant by an audit company. So all those five principles, if I talk about, Veeam is taking care of this very nicely. Veeam is working on those five principles, and these all five principles are already included in the Veeam portfolio, right? So now the main part, V10. Why V10? And since you guys are already, I believe most of you guys have already attended the sessions, but again, I'll give you a brief highlight what V10 brings in. So it says that the faster, stronger, smarter. Yeah, this tagline, almost summarizes everything what Veeam had provided with V10. So when I say the most, the loved feature of the V10 by the end customers or by the partners is the NAS backup. This is where I am going to focus today. The NAS backup provided by Veeam is a very nice tool. Lots of guys were asking for it. And when you are talking about a NAS backup, NAS is generally, huge unstructured data, which needs to be backed up. Generally in NAS world, if you talk about NAS can be very, low end object storage till very high end NAS storages. So I'll talk about this, how this works. So the architecture which Veeam had built for the NAS backup is very nice. We are going to talk about this. This is a very nice feature which Veeam had introduced in V10. Then the second part is instant recovery for instant business agility. See, guys, this tool is also this. If you guys are familiar with the instant recovery, right? So instant recovery is there in Veeam portfolio since beginning. So you can do an instant VM recovery. You can boot up a VM from a backup file in couple of seconds, right? So what's new in this instant VM recovery? In this instant VM recovery, I can do a multiple VMs instant recovery on the spot on VMware vSphere with the new instant recovery engine, which is much faster, much stronger, and smarter. Right. So this again is a very nice feature. And the last part is, see, I'm just giving you a highlight. This is just couple of features out of those 150 new features which Veeam had introduced. So one of the feature is data stays safe. We have created something, as I was discussing about the cloud part. The cloud part, we were doing a cloud integration, right? We were doing the blob integration, we were doing the AWS S3 integrations. So with the V10, if you have S3 bucket wherein you are using it for, let's say, a long-term retention, I can make sure that the data which you have written on S3 is immutable. Nobody else can write on that data. So what I'm giving you an 100% surety that the data which is being written onto your S3 block, it's 100% ransomware proof. Nobody can touch that data other than Veeam, right? This is possible, guys. It's called immutable backup, right? So this is a very nice feature which gives you an flexibility, gives you an assurity that your data is safe, because in today's world lots of the problems you can hear related with the ransomware attacks, related with the encryptions and all. So this is one of the way wherein you are not spending much, but you are getting all those functionalities which along with Veeam, with everything comes as a bundle in Veeam Backup and Replication Console. So you don't have to buy any other licenses for this. Everything is all included with V10, which comes as a bundle. So that's why V10 is a very nice tool, very nice software which is being introduced by Veeam. Now, other than those three main features, what are other features? You know that we do a physical backup also. So for Oracle and SAP HANA, there are some enhancements being done at that level also. So we have included couple of new features called parallel processing. Then the most beloved feature for the Linux guys, that Veeam had introduced MySQL and PostgreSQL. They have started protecting this, and guys, the most lovable features for the Linux guy, which in V10 Veeam had introduced, is called Linux Proxy. Right. So I'll just give you a brief. What is Linux Proxy? If most of you guys are already working on Veeam infrastructure and you guys are already aware of the fact that Veeam has most probably three major components in Veeam Backup Replication Console. One is your Veeam management server, second is your Veeam backup proxy, third is your Veeam backup repository. So out of these three, second one, which is Veeam backup proxy, is a component which does processing of your data, which is the heart and soul of Veeam backup and replication. So before V10, this was only a Windows server. Right. So if you want to install a backup proxy, you only need to have Windows servers running on top of it. you can install a proxy. But lots of enterprises were asking for a Linux proxy, and this time Veeam had introduced a Linux proxy. No wonder Linux compared to Windows having less footprints, it's faster, it doesn't consume a Windows license. So Linux proxy is also introduced for VMware environment in V10. And then the last one is the best, it's 3-2-1. So whosoever is working on the enterprise world is already aware of the fact what is 3-2-1. Right, so 3-2-1, 3 copies of your data, 2 on-premise, 1 on different media. So how to justify that rule in backup world? Veeam justifies it very nicely. You can have a DR site, you can have a blob storage integration, you can have a cloud integration, you can do an on-premise backup. So 3-2-1 is completely justifiable by Veeam using Veeam backup replication V10. Okay. Then the recovery part. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I can instantly recover multiple VMs on VMware. Then I have introduced flexible Oracle recovery for admins and all. Then we have database RSnap. So for example, in this, you have SQL servers which are like, backing up, and you want to do a point in time recovery. So that is also possible. If you guys have seen the Veeam Explorer of SQL, Veeam Explorer for Oracle, you can see how granular Veeam goes in terms of recoverability. So these are the new engines which are being redesigned, which are being, created for a purpose to do a faster recovery, to see a GUI view of your data, so that whatever, let's say, transaction you want to recover in SQL, that also you can recover it using Veeam Explorer. So this is how granular Veeam goes inside recovery, right? So other than that, these are also a couple of new features in terms of the monitoring. Veeam had introduced couple of new features of Veeam 1 for Nutanix CHVs. So these are a couple of reports which you can see in Veeam 1. Then obviously monitoring of your NAS data. We are going to talk about this, how it works. So in Veeam 1, we have couple of reports which are associated with your NAS data, how it works, where the bottleneck is. Couple of reports in Veeam 1 is associated with this. Then this is again a new things which is being introduced by Veeam, which is called unleash your data. Means you have your backed up data available in your backup repository, and nowadays lots of guys are talking about the data mining, the big datas and all those things. So with unleash your data, Veeam provides you the APIs with the help of which you can connect your backed up data and use that data for data mining purposes, for the big data kind of scenarios. That is also being possible. Then seal your data, save time. So what happened? The retention parts, the long-term retentions, right? So this is related with your S3 immutable backup. So if you want to keep data available 24/7 until it ages out, right? So you can do that also. So all those things are doing very smartly in Veeam. So now let's talk about the backup and recovery part. Uh, the backup and recovery part, right? I have already talked about it. So if I talk about cloud, Veeam Backup and Recovery console is a centralized console wherein I can do a backup of cloud, virtual and physical from one centralized console. So in cloud, we are supporting AWS, Azure, IBM, Google, and any service provider cloud. Then in virtual, we support VMware ESXi, Microsoft Hyper-V, and Nutanix CHV. And in physical, we support Windows, Linux, AIX, Solaris, and Oracle. All those three workloads. Once again, I am mentioning that we are doing it centrally through one centralized console. Then when we say the backup, see, the backup means that backup should be an application consistent backup. So for all those workloads which are mentioned above, everything is an application consistent backup. Yeah. So what does it mean application consistent backup? So I think most of you are already aware of the fact that at virtual level, when we do a backup, it's an agentless backup. We directly speaks with the APIs of the hypervisor and do a backup. So when we do this type of backup, how do we make sure that the applications which are running inside those workloads are in consistent state? So for that, we have something called sure backup. We have some algorithms which runs behind it when the backup triggers. So with the help of which we are achieving 100% application consistent level backup. And you can see this while you do a backup. And when you recover it, then also you can feel the same thing. So what does it mean? That when we do a backup, it's instantaneously recoverable, it's 100% recoverable, and it's application aware processing backup. We are verifying your backup using sure backup and the algorithms which are defined by Veeam, and we are completely a software defined software, right? We don't need any specific hardware to run our software on top of it. So we don't bind you with any of the platform which other vendors, I would say, or other guys are locking you in. So if you have your backup data available, if you have a machine available of any vendor, you can create your scenario, you can build your infrastructure. If you want to do a backup, you can do backup. If you want to restore, you can do a restore. Yeah, so we are always 24/7 into 365 days available with your data. We protect your data and we make sure the data which we have protected, whenever you need it, you can recover it at any point of time. Okay, now let's talk about the enhanced instant recovery feature, right? Why this recovery feature is being introduced? What was the need of it? So as you are already aware of the fact that what is instant recovery? Instant VM recovery is a process with the help of which we are making sure that the data which you have backed up is recoverable. It's being mounted on an hypervisor in a couple of seconds, right? So now you just imagine, right? So in a data center world wherein you are running cloud VMs, wherein you are running the hypervisors VMs, wherein you are running the physical servers and all, you are taking a backup of everything, right? And to restore something, if you get some functionality wherein you are restoring in seconds, right? So what you can do, so in that scenario, you have, let's say, your physical server available and your physical server goes down. So in that scenario, you can instantly recover any workload. When I say any workload, any cloud, any virtual, any physical workload to a VMware vSphere in seconds. It's called instant recovery. See guys, I'm not locking you with any of the hypervisor. I am not locking you with any of the hardware. I can recover any data which is being backed up using Veeam onto an VMware vSphere hypervisor. Similarly, I can also recover it as a virtual hard disk of VMware. So what advantages you are getting? The RPOs and the RTOs which you are getting is very less in this scenario. Instantaneously, it will work like this. So this is the one of the new feature which is being introduced in V10. Then the feature which we wanted to talk about it in detail, the NAS backup, right? So guys, the NAS backup is, right? It's that data which is like huge in numbers, which is like unstructured data. Nobody knows what is inside that data, because generally if you talk about the NAS shares, right, this is a share which is being accessed by an enterprise which has almost everything, right? It has your word files, it has your music files, it has your I don't know, images, it has everything. So it's a mix of your structured data, unstructured data, used data, unused data. So with V10, we are supporting these four types of NAS shares. So we support SMB, version 123, NFS, Windows file server, and Linux file server. So all those four platforms are supported. Now, when we talk about the backup, okay, so guys, just make sure, just be aware of the fact that this is not NDMP. Okay, this is Veeam's own technology with the help of which they are doing a backup of NAS, right? So with this technology, what we are using changed file tracking technology, right? So I'll go this thing in detail in my coming slide. So in change file tracking, what we are doing once your first backup is being done, instead of doing the entire reading of the file from the beginning, we are only doing change file blocks to the next level, and then we are taking a backup. So the advantage is what we are getting after doing this, the incrementals which are happening for your NAS shares are very fast. Instead of writing the entire directory, we are only writing that folder which is being changed, or the file inside that folder which is being changed. I'll talk about this in detail in my coming slide. How is it working, right? Then the third part is snapshot friendly. Okay, so with the snapshot friendly, what I'm doing, I'm leveraging VSS capabilities of your NAS share, and we are taking a backup. So we are not locking any file. I can do a point in time recovery, and also I can do an offloading to another storage, to an low end tier storage, which I'll talk about in detail in next slide. So why is it important? Why you want to take a NAS backup, right? So as you know that before V10, Veeam was not doing any NAS backups. It was through NDMP, file to tape backup, which was very slow. It's not at all scalable, and when it comes to recoverability, it was not as fast as the current backup is. So you want to do a restore of your NAS share granularly. For example, let's say you have 64 TB of data, right? And you have taken a backup of 64 TB. And now if you want to recover a single file, you don't have to recover the entire 64 TB. You should have some kind of capability with the help of which you can see that the 64, that one file is available on inside that directory, inside that folder, and I only want to recover that file, right? So before V10 it was not possible, but with V10 now it's all possible, right? I will show you, I'll give you a brief demo of this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what all things I can back up? I can back up SMB shares, NFS share, I can back up Windows file server, I can back up Linux file servers. All those things are possible. Now, how we are writing the data, right? So we have included a couple of new components in the V10 for the NAS backup processing. We are doing file-based backup. We have multiple proxies which can do a parallel processing of your backup. I'll talk about what is file proxies. Then our incremental backup, as I said earlier, we have something called change file tracking technology, which is being introduced in cache repository. That cache repository keeps a CRC check of all the data of all the attributes which are being changed, and then we do a backup, right? I'll talk about this again in my coming slide. Then guys, everybody is aware of the fact that Veeam, when we talk about Veeam, backup is just a one file, which is .vbk file. But for this new NAS file, we have introduced a couple of new backup extensions, which is a combination of 4 or 5 different backup files, which keeps a data backed up data coming from your NAS drive. So that NAS is a 64 MB chunk, which is being stored in your backup repository. And yes, as always, Veeam does compression at its job level. So for NAS backup also, we are doing compression as we do it for other workloads. Now, this is the technical architecture of the NAS shares of the NAS backup in Veeam, which has been introduced. So if you see on the left hand side, this is the source, which has SMB, NFS, and Linux machine or whatever it is. Then we have from Veeam side, as I mentioned earlier, that we have something called file proxies. So the guys who are already aware of Veeam, in Veeam we have backup proxy. So backup proxy is the component which processes your data, compresses your data. So similarly, here in this scenario also, we have file proxies which are being used to process your data, right, for the NAS drive. So it's a separate proxy which you are creating in Veeam Backup Replication Console. This can be a Windows VM which you can use. Then if you see on down of that file proxy, you can see there is something called coordinator and cache repository. This coordinator and cache repository is the place which does a CRC check of your NAS. So guys, just imagine you have, let's say, 64 TB of unstructured data in your NAS box, and we are backing up that NAS box. So that 64 TB is being accessed by number of users and being modified on daily basis, right? So what happened when my first full backup runs? At that time, my file proxies speaks with my source and it start backing up your data. So the data goes into coordinator cache repository and it creates a tree of my data, which has the information of all the structure, all the files which are being available in source as a metadata file, right? So what happened once that metadata file is created in my cache repository, I will do a backup. So I'll do a backup on short-term retention. This is my backup repository. Now, what's the advantage of this cache repository? When your second incremental happens, right? So this cache repository keeps an information, keeps a check on the change blocks which are happening in your source. So what happened in cache repository, I have a source agent which speaks with the source that what all files are changing. It keeps a hash of that file in my cache repository. So what is the advantage of keeping a hash of in that cache repository? Then when my incremental starts working, so what happened that incremental, instead of reading the entire block, instead of reading the entire tree, I'm only reading that block of that tree which is being changed. So this is how we are making sure that when my incrementals are happening, it's super fast. It should not take that much of time, which generally in older days NDMP or some other backup technology takes. So what happened with the help of this, my incremental window is amazingly fast, right? So the purpose of taking a backup is always to take that backup as soon as early as possible, but in a consistent manner. So cache repository takes care of that. Then yes, obviously once my data has reached to my repository, everybody is aware of the fact that I can do a second copy of my backup, which is also possible. I can do a blob integration, a cloud integration with either the blobs or the AWS S3's buckets for long-term retention. That is also possible. And along with it, as I mentioned earlier, see, everything is being done in Veeam Backup and Replication Console. But if you have multiple VBI servers and you have multiple NAS shares, and if you want to manage it centrally, you can use Veeam Enterprise Manager also. From there also you can configure all those things, you can manage all those things, and from Veeam 1 you can monitor all those things. I'm talking about the NAS shares and all. So guys, this is a very nice diagram which clearly and very simply explains the NAS technical architecture of Veeam, how it works, and then the targets. as I mentioned earlier, we can use any of the simple repository, any of the cheapest storage which you want to keep a backup on top of it. Then you have scale out backup repository for performance tiers. So I think everybody is already aware of the fact that scale out backup repository is a combination of multiple backup storages as an logical storage, as a combination of storages, right? Then you have dedupe appliances wherein I can keep a copy of my data. Uh, all those things are already supported. So without delaying much, let me just give you a brief overview of the NAS backup. Just give me a sec. I will just share my screen with you. I believe everybody can see my screen. So I just wanted to show you how your NAS backup works. So I believe everybody is aware of this console. This is Veeam Backup and Replication console. If you see, this is the home button. So this is the version 10 of Veeam Backup and Replication. If you go on to inventory and you just scroll down a bit, you can see there is a new tab called File Share, which is being introduced in V10. If you go to File Share, you can see there are 3 tabs. So you just need to add your file share. So just click on add file share. You can get 3 types of tabs. You can add file server, you can add SMB, you can add NFS. So in my scenario, since I have already added one SMB share, so let me just show you, go through this, what all options you get while adding it. Let me edit this. So here I need to provide my shared folder path. So this is my shared folder path. I'm using an IP address. You can use FQDN as well. Then if the share requires and credentials, that you can define it here. Then in advance, you need to choose one of the method. Yeah. So you can see there are 3 methods. One is backup directly from the file shares. So if I'm backing up directly from a file share, I'm directly reading the data from your source. Okay, without skipping anything, without locking anything, and whatever locked files are there, that again has to be retried once the primary job is finished. The second part is backup from a Microsoft VSS snapshot. There are certain NAS, high-end NAS boxes which gives you a VSS functionality, with the help of which I can, take a snapshot of your NAS devices and can do a backup. Or I can also define a storage snapshot path. If you have some, scripts available, you have some kind of, customized NAS which is being used, and before taking a backup, you want to make sure that nobody is accessing that share. You can define some kind of scripts here also and do a backup. Right. So I'm using a VSS just in case, but mine one is a very simple share running on one Windows. So here you can see if it is not VSS compliant, it will automatically fail over to direct backup, which I have used it by default. So after that, just click on next. In next, you can see there is another tab called file proxy. Right. So in file proxy, as I mentioned earlier, this is a new proxy. It is only being used to back up your NAS shares. Right. So I'm using all proxies. This is my file backup proxy. This you can see it in your backup infrastructure components. And then here you need to define a cache repository. You remember we have discussed about the cache repository. The cache repository is a place which keeps a metadata, a CRC check of your entire NAS tree. So this generally needs to be as close as possible to your source, so that it keeps an understanding of the change files or the blocks which are happening on your source. And we also prefer that, if this can be something which is fast to react, maybe some kind of SSDs with good amount of resources associated with it. But it's not a requirement, it is recommendation, but you can use anything, right? Then the most important part, see, if you see in today's world, the NAS boxes, you can get a cheaper NAS box which has very low compute and very low IOPS till very high IOPS, right? You can get any kind of it. So if let's say if I am Veeam taking a backup of your low-end NAS device, and if I take a backup and let's say the size is 64 TB, so just assume to backup 64 TB from that NAS device, how much time does it take? So it will almost kill your NAS device until my backup got finished, right? So to avoid that performance impact on your production environment, what we can do, we can define something called backup IO control. So let's say if you understand that your NAS box is a low-end NAS box, here you can define a backup IO control. So what that backup IO control will do, it instead of doing the parallel streamings, it will not do those parallel streamings. It will try to minimize the impact on your production NAS, and it will do a backup in a slower way. Obviously, then your backup performance may impact, right? So if since it's my share running on a Windows, so that's why I choose the lower impact. But if you know that your NAS box is intelligent enough to understand that type of instructions which are coming from a backup software, you can do faster backup also. So all those things are possible. Then you just click on apply. Once you click on apply, so this is where you are adding your SMB share. The same way it works for NFS, same way it works for Windows file server. Right, just click next, finish. So once your share is added, you can see it like this in your tab. Then you need to create a backup for this. So you can see there are multiple ways of creating a backup in Veeam. So you can do it from here also, or you can do it from here. Since I have already created a job, let me edit this job and I'll show you how it looks like. These are the main options which you can see. So name your job, whatever you want to see, add that file share. See, when you are adding a file share, you can also exclude something if you want. See, generally, as I mentioned earlier, your NAS drive is a combination of unstructured data, and in normal world, you don't want to back up everything, right? So if you want to, let's say, exclude some MP3 files, some other files which you know that you don't need this file, you can put an exclusion also here, and that works properly. Right, just click on next. Here you are defining your backup repository, short-term retention. You are defining the versions of file, for how many versions you want to keep of that file. So here it's in days or in months, you can define it as per your requirement. Then also for longer term retention, we mentioned that I can do a blob integration, right? So here you can define your longer term archive for how many days or for how many months or for how many years you want to keep a data. So this is an archival repository. This repository can be a blob storage and cloud storage or any other cheap storages wherein you want to keep a copy of your data for longer term retention. Yeah, so this is a very nice feature for your NAS devices, right? Then in advanced, obviously these are a couple of extra things which you can define according to your requirement. I'll not go in that field. Click on next. Here you are defining a secondary repository. You remember that after doing short-term retention, I'm putting a copy in either blob or in any of the cloud storages. Then if you want to keep another copy, maybe somewhere on your DR side, here also you can define the secondary repository. So first your backup is finished, then after that it will go to your secondary destination. So once this is done, just put your schedule. This is the same console which you see in normal this thing. So I have already done a backup. I'll just show you a couple of scenarios of restoration, how your restoration works. So if you click on restore entire share, roll back to a point in time, restore individual files and folders. So if you click on roll back in time, this is your point in time recovery. Click on next, see the share. It will open up a browser. You can see your GUI view of your NAS boxes. Just give me a sec, guys. It will come up. So I know I have taken longer than I expected. So this is supposed to open your backup explorer. which has the GUI view of your backed up data. And you can also see that in that I can do a point in time recovery, means I can use the restore points, which are, let's say I have taken 10 restore points, so I can choose which restore points I want to restore. So guys, I think it's taking time, but it should work. I just wanted to show you that field wherein you can choose the point in time recovery. So let's say it should come. So in the meantime, let's say since this comes up, if anybody wants to ask any questions related with it.
Sunny, we have a few questions in the live Q&A section. If you can have a look there and answer those.
Okay. Okay. So
I've
let me do
published the
one thing.
questions.
See,
Yeah.
yeah. So let me do one thing. I'll close this session because I think it's everything is running on my laptop and looks like my window is out of resources. So
Okay.
we can further discuss this if anybody wants to know about this, how it works. Right. So let me try to answer those questions as quickly as possible because we are already running out of time. Let me close this. Let me see a couple of questions. Subi, I can't see. Okay.
On the live Q&A on the right side.
Veeam backup for Nutanix AHV requires additional licenses. Copying NAS backup secondary target. So this is one of the questions which I can see. See, the NAS backup, yes, it requires a licenses. It's the same universal licenses you need. So if you talk about the licensing, it's 250 GB per instance production data. So if you want to back up 1 TB of production data, you need to size it accordingly. So it's 250 GB per license. Yeah. Then Ram Prakash also asked one questions. Customer already has VAS perpetual. Do they need to buy additional licenses for NAS backup? Yes. NAS backup licenses are subscription-based licenses. These are your VAS wool, which is Veeam Universal licenses. Yes, you need to buy additional licenses to cover your NAS backup. Then another question we have which says if we back up a physical server that run on Oracle database, can we run it on a VM by using the backup, and how do we accomplish this task? Yes, you can do this. Same. So if you are running, let's say Oracle on a Windows physical server, right? So to do a backup of your Windows, you are installing an agent and which takes care of your Windows backup, and for your Oracle database you are doing RMN backup, right? So for that, when you do you already have that VBK file available with you in Veeam repository, so you can do a restore of that in your vSphere environment. That is possible. Other than that, in V10, whether we can store file data on tape. Okay. See, guys, Veeam is a disk-based backup solution. So first target should always be your disk. Then after that, you can go to a tape in a normal way. So it supports NAS data also. That is not a challenge. Right. So I believe I have covered most of the questions, guys. So I believe you guys have already my email with you. So if you have any clarification, any technical demonstration or anything which you need to know, you can email me at any point of time. We have some small quiz which is being presented, I believe, on your phones and all.
Yeah, I'll
So
just take them through that. And
yeah.
we will be sharing the recording of this webinar along with the slides with everybody who's attended the webinar as well. And you can share it further ahead with your team members if you'd like to do that. And also, I would like to now, we would be doing a small quiz, which is just, I'll just share my screen 1 second. I think you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, so everybody would have to go on this particular login. Like you just have to go on to this login, and then you have to sign in with just setting your name, and then you can take part in the quiz. So if everybody can log on from their phones, just type this URL. I think we have the answers. You guys must have seen the answers on your leaderboard. With this, we would like to conclude the webinar for today. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll be sending the recording and the presentation to all of you, and you can ask any questions to Sunny directly if there are any other doubts that you might have. Thank you very much.